This is Bill Osborne, City Manager, and today on the agenda we'll continue to look at the topic of community development. Previously we had looked at some background on community development and talked about how Douglasville had focused on housing. Today we will be looking at current activities, and I'll be talking with Marcia Hampton, Director of Community and Downtown Services. And in the first program, we didn't give Marcia much of an opportunity to talk, so we promised today to give her a little more airtime on this edition of On the Agenda.
My name is Marcia Hampton. I'm the Community and Downtown Services Director with the City of Douglasville, and welcome to this edition of On the Agenda, and my guest today is City Manager Bill Osborne.
Well, Marcia, it's nice to be with you. You know, Jeff Knowles told me to watch out that you'd be taking over my program, and I see that here we are, the second time I have you as my guest, and you're doing the introduction. Seriously, it's great to have you back with me today. Appreciate the work that you do as Director of the City's Department of Community and Downtown Services. And you and Jeff Knowles, I think, do an excellent job on Gov 101 and with your crosswalk program. But we're going to talk a little bit more today about community development. In the last episode, I had given our viewers somewhat of a historical perspective on community development in Douglasville, what took place in the 1980s and 1990s to improve our neighborhoods. And most of that was done with federal funds that came to the city initially from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and then through the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. And most of our focus in that early days community development was on housing. And we had a major project in the late 1980s on the north side to improve housing, to improve water and sewer facilities, drainage facilities, streets, parks and recreation. We also had a program over in the Mill Village to doing improvements to their water and sewer system, to do street improvements, to improve housing. And so those were things that did enable neighborhoods in Douglasville certainly to get some type of facelift and to improve the communities. But it became more difficult for the city of Douglasville to get community development block grants, and you know that because you have written a couple of applications recently. And one reason for this is that it's a competitive situation, and we're competing against local governments in rural Georgia. And there are four major criteria that DCA uses in deciding who is funded. They do look at the content of your application, in other words, what you're proposing to do. They also look at the strategy for how you intend to achieve what you want to do. But the other half of the criteria basically deal with poverty indexes, is what is your poverty level and what part of your population is in the poverty level. And in the metro Atlanta area, of course, that minimal income is rather high, especially as compared to the rest of the state. So it makes it very difficult to do. We found our best hope for CDBG grants in recent years have been with community facilities, and we were able to get on the fourth try a CDBG grant to help us with the Hawthorne Center over at Davis Park, though we got only about a fourth of the money that we needed for that project, and the rest had to be local funds. But all of that is saying that CDBG is no longer one of our major focal points for community development, but there still are things that we're working on in community development, and you've got a lot of things going on. That's what we're going to talk about today. And I want to start with the oldest program that you have. Goes back many years. In fact, when I first came to Douglasville as a consultant back in 1985, there was the Downtown Development Authority, and it was rather active in the late 1980s. But then conditions changed, people changed, and the DDA, the Downtown Development Authority, was not very active for a period of time. I know that's now changed. Tell us what's going on with DDA at this time.
Right now, the DDA is focused on helping the city through its master plan project. That's one of the priorities that they have, and they feel like that's going to be the #1 priority for the next couple of years. They're still focused on education for the local businesses, which we know is important. DCA has actually recognized our DDA as being one of the programs in the state, and Main Street program that offers some of the best training. We are also hoping within the next couple years to roll out incentive programs to bring in more retail business, because as you know, over time we've lost a lot of our retail stores. So we're hoping that we could look to improve that, and we are still helping businesses by promoting our facade grant program, which helps to revitalize the outside of buildings, and just awareness about what downtown revitalization is about, and helping with volunteerism, and then also what probably most people know about our special events, our Christmas festival. They're still heavily involved in that. The program, the event has grown this year. We saw a turnout for the tour of homes, over 400 people actually attended the event, and we were able to raise more money this year than we've ever over the last 7 years that we've had the event. So they're working hard, and they're still hoping to improve all the programming that they offer.
Well, that's great, and I know that you and the DDA board members have done a lot, keeping in mind what we need to do to make our downtown area more vital and vibrant. And I think that's succeeding, and we're seeing new things happen downtown. All of us recognize that with Arbor Place Mall, with Douglas Boulevard, Highway 5, that most of the commercial establishments, at least in terms of square footage, have moved into that area. And it's created not only a special problem downtown, but a unique opportunity downtown. And the DDA, and of course you and your staff are certainly working hard to make this be what a downtown really is, kind of the heart and soul of a community, and that's what we want to see happen. But now I know one of the things in a downtown area that we want to talk about is the Main Street program. Now, several years ago, Douglasville decided that we wanted to try to receive from the state of Georgia recognition as one of the state's Main Street cities. And we submitted an application. We didn't succeed the first time, but we learned a lot in the process. So the second time we were actually selected by DCA to become a Main Street program, to be a Georgia Classic Main Street city. The importance that we place on this, if anybody that looks at our letterhead, they will see that our letterhead, down in the bottom part of that letterhead, we have two things. One is we were selected by the Georgia Municipal Association and Georgia Trend Magazine to be a city of excellence. And the other thing we have on our letterhead is that we're a Georgia Classic Main Street city, because we're very proud of this. Tell us how the Main Street program is organized and how it operates.
In some cities it's different, but here in Douglasville we utilize the 4-point approach. If people don't realize, the Main Street program is a national program. The state of Georgia participates in that program. It's a way to help economic development in your downtown area. It's driven by 4 points: economic restructuring, design, organization, and promotion. So our Downtown Development Authority board is actually the board for our Main Street program. And if, some people look at other cities, they're two separate boards, but here we feel like we're all working together for the same effort. So our DDA is our Main Street board. We have committees that work toward each point, and we basically meet once a month. There are activities and events surrounded by economic development, design, and we have a Main Street manager who heads up that program as well and works with those volunteers in that board.
And one of the requirements for a city that gets Main Street recognition is that Main Street manager has to be devoted full-time to the Main Street program. And of course, one of your staff members, Stephanie is Elworth, has that assignment. And of course, you were employed a few years ago to start work as the city of Douglasville as the Main Street manager. Did a great job with that. So good that we promoted you eventually to your current position. And we're pleased with the job that Stephanie is doing as the Main Street manager. And tell us what a Main Street manager does.
The best and easiest way I could describe it, it's basically like a mall manager. You look at the downtown service area, which is designated by the elected officials, and that service area basically extends from Strickland Street to I-20, south of I-20, Rose Avenue to Fairburn Road. That's the area that we work. And basically what Stephanie does is she tries to make certain that the merchants are kept abreast of what's going on locally in politics, that they are afforded every opportunity to help revitalize their business, revitalize their property, to make certain that the storefronts are filled, to make certain that there are activities and there are economic drivers happening downtown. And she is also the direct staff person for the DDA board that works with the Main Street program. So it's a lot for one person, but being that I've done it myself, it can be done, and it's a fun job, and you like working with the business owners, and it's almost kind of like a soap opera. You never know what's going to happen.
Right. Well, City TV features our Main Street program, and from time to time our viewers will see Stephanie visiting some of the downtown businesses. Also the old historic Douglas County Courthouse has been featured. I look forward to those future Main Street programs so that we can just see some of the things that are happening now. Well, we've got a lot more to talk about, but we're going to take a break at this time. So when we come back, Marcia Hampton and I will continue to talk about community development.
Welcome back to On the Agenda, and this time I'll call on our city manager to ask me a couple questions.
Well, I've got some more questions for you, Marcia. And I want to start by talking about historic preservation. This is an important part of your department. City of Douglasville some years ago established a historic district in the Central Business District and adjacent areas. And they appointed a Citizen Historic Preservation Commission to basically make certain decisions dealing with historic preservation. And I know that your staff provides the staffing for the Historic Preservation Commission, the HPC, and I know that you've got a lot of duties relative to historic preservation. Tell me about those.
Right now, we work with a 7-member commission, and I know earlier we previously had a 5-member commission. Now we have 7 members. Those are all residents of the city of Douglasville. A lot of them actually live in the historic district. And what we do as staff, we try to help them and give them all the information necessary to preside over historic preservation hearings. And those hearings are there for any property owner in the historic district who is looking to do any material change to their building. So for instance, if someone has the old asbestos siding on their house and they would like to change to hardy board, they would have to come before the commission to make that change and request their certificate of preservation.
You know, historic preservation can be complex
Yes.
and controversial.
Yes.
Sometimes it means neighbors have different points of view. One neighbor may be seeking to make some changes in their property. Other neighbors may be opposed to that. And of course, the Citizen Historic Preservation Commission then is in a sense in
Right.
the middle to make certain decisions. And sometimes not everybody's happy with the HPC's decision. What happens when the HPC makes a decision?
When the HPC makes a decision and hopefully it's an approval, and if it's not an approval, that applicant actually has the opportunity to appeal to City Council. If they're not happy or they feel as though the decision was made unjustly, they can go before City Council. City Council has the opportunity to overturn the decision that the Historic Preservation Commission makes. Typically, when the HPC makes a decision, they try to make the decision based on guidelines that we have in place. So material changes, we try to make certain that those materials reflect the period of time that the house or the business or the property would have been built in. So hopefully there won't be too many appeals to City Council.
Right. Well, certainly preserving our history is very important, and change is very
Yes.
important. And one key, of course, is having a plan for how this is
Right.
to occur. And I know at this time, as you mentioned earlier, we're in the process of developing a master plan for the downtown area. I know the City Council had appointed representatives from the DDA, the HPC, Keep Douglasville Beautiful, and various citizen representatives to form a citizen group to work on the master plan. And I know that working with you and your staff, that this has been going on. We've hired a consultant, and we don't have time today to go into any details. Plus, the report is getting ready to be presented and hadn't been finalized. But just quickly tell us about the process of how this plan is being put together, because frankly, this plan is going to guide downtown for a number of years to come.
Well, first, since we've hired Mike Sizemore, some of the audience members probably have had the opportunity to actually meet with him. He's been to a couple of public meetings, some with the Central Business District Association, just gathering public opinion about what the public wants. He's also taken the information that I gathered working with that citizens committee that the elected officials appointed via the RFP, that certain things that the citizens have said they wanted, such as more street activity, more restaurants, more retail. He's looking at our local ordinances. He's looking at the design guidelines that I talked about with HPC. So there's a lot of information that the Sizemore Group is looking at to compile, to come back to the elected officials to say, here's what the citizens, their concerns have been, this is what we have, this is what we're working with, and here are some suggestions that we think you need to move to the future to make downtown development viable here in downtown Douglasville.
Very good. Well, let's turn to another subject, the Downtown Conference Center. That's another responsibility in your department, and I think you and your employees do a great job with our conference center. We're not going to talk about that in any detail today. On a recent edition of On the Agenda, I had our manager, Jennifer Bean, as my guest, along with Carlos Underwood, who's responsible for maintenance at the Downtown Conference Center. But I would like everybody to know that Jennifer is taking reservations from people who are interested in booking space in the Downtown Conference Center. Some weeks ago, we had decided not to book events in the conference center after June of this year because of renovation work. But now we're looking at how that work, whatever it is, can be done without closing down the conference center for a number of months. So Jennifer is now back in business, and I know we've booked a lot of events, but if people have an interest in booking an event in the conference center, on the screen we're showing you telephone number for Jennifer, and just give her a call, and certainly she'll be glad to try to see if she can accommodate you. Marcia, I know that both personally and professionally, you're glad that we're booking things past the middle of this summer, because you've got a special event coming up this fall. Tell us what is going to happen.
Well, the first week in October, Douglasville downtown will host the Georgia Downtown Conference. And basically that conference is the main conference that DCA and the Georgia Department of Community Affairs and the Georgia Downtown Association utilize to train all people interested in downtown. It's open for elected officials, it's open for volunteers, it's open for merchants. It's a 3-day conference. Hopefully, we look at possibly bringing 500 people in the downtown area. That's good for our merchants. That's, very good for our restaurants. So they'll be all over downtown. It'll create a little bit of a parking problem, but having a parking problem is actually a good thing. That means people are downtown.
Right. Well, that's great, and I know you worked hard to get this conference here. Also, you've had a new honor bestowed on you to show that you're well respected in the state. In the area in which you work. Tell us about that.
I have been named Vice President of the Georgia Downtown Association. It's an organization that works with both GMA and DCA with managers throughout the downtown area that help with public policy through the state, education, and then we also provide scholarships for downtown managers to go to national conference as well.
Well, that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I know that you'll be following in the steps of someone from Valdosta and Savannah.
That's
so
right.
That's pretty good company we're keeping in terms of downtown areas. Let's talk a minute about our Convention and Visitors Bureau. And again, time won't let us get into any details, but this is a significant economic development too for the city. Tourism is a big industry, and it's we try to enhance what takes place with our local hotels and motels. Also, of course, people who are staying in your hotels and motels are going out to your restaurants and shopping in your shopping centers. So it's important for what we do with CVB. And we'll talk about tourism on a future edition of On the Agenda. But I wanted people to know that in your spare time, along with everything else, you have the Convention and Visitors Bureau that you're responsible for. Also, you are our primary link to the Cultural Arts Council, to the Douglas County Chamber of Commerce. So you stay pretty busy, don't you?
Just a little bit.
Well, let me, as we move toward the conclusion of this edition of On the Agenda, I want to go back and remind people of what I had said earlier, that when I came to work in 1985, with the CDBG program, that was with Braun Cleveland Associates. Braun had worked for the city for several years, worked closely with the mayor and the city manager and the city council. Ironically, after I became city manager, I told Braun that we didn't need his services anymore, that I already knew what his firm did because I had done part of it for his firm. And actually, then we hired to be our first director of community development, Gary Tilt, who had worked for consultant firms. And so over the next decade, I think we had 2 small projects that we actually had Braun Cleveland Associates to do for us. But Braun was always on the lookout for things that he might sell to potential clients. And back in the fall of 1989, after Mayor Thompson had been elected, but before he took office, Braun called and wanted to meet with the mayor-elect and myself because he said there was a new program coming down the pike that we might be interested in. We were, and actually the city council contracted with Braun Cleveland Associates to prepare an application for us. It was for a new program. Actually, the name changed, I think, twice during the application process. But it became known as the Livable Centers Initiatives, LCI. And that application that Braun Cleveland Associates prepared for us actually became one of 9 or 10 in the whole metro area that was approved for a planning grant. And the city advertised for consultant firms to do the planning grant. Actually, we selected somebody other than Braun Cleveland Associates, much to Braun's distress. But we were very pleased with the product that we got, and it was such a good plan that Douglasville became the first city in the metro area to receive implementation funds for a Livable Centers Initiative grant. So in terms of community development, That's another big step that we took because, that actually provided a lot of motivation for things that's happened in the downtown area. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's actually given us nicer sidewalks, provided lighting, opportunities for banners. Sometimes people may not look at that as big, but when you go to a city where the sidewalks are not adequate and there's not adequate lighting, you don't have adequate banners to advertise different events, it's done a lot for us. I think the citizens are pleased. O'Neill Plaza was upgraded, more conducive for our outside concerts, different events that we have. So it's created a lot of momentum, especially around the O'Neill Plaza area and on our sidewalks.
Right. Way to improve. We've improved intersections, done a number of things in the downtown area, and we've also been able to spread out from downtown with certain sidewalks and everything. Let me just in closing note that although Braun sold his company a couple of years before his death last year, the city of Douglasville has continued to benefit from the services of Braun Cleveland Associates, and we currently have a couple of projects for them. They've obtained funding for us from the Department of Transportation for what's called transportation enhancement projects. One of the ones that we're working on now that we'll see implemented in 2008 is corridor lighting and banners on Campbellton Street and Dallas Highway, as well as gateway signage as you enter the city. One will be near Freedom Island, the other up on Dallas Highway near where the fire station is. As we conclude this edition, though, of On the Agenda, I hope that people have seen that we've got a lot going on and why we changed the name from Community Development to Community and Downtown Services, because we have so much of a focus at this time on downtown, it being the heart of our city. I'd like to thank our viewers for watching and like to thank you for being here. Do you have any closing comments you want to make?
Well, I appreciate you letting me take over the show. It's been fun.
Well, glad to hear. And when I watch it, I'll see if at some point I get reduced down and flicked off your shoulder. But I have to tell you, your ability to be on future editions of On the Agenda depends on how nice that you and the editors of this program treat me. But in all seriousness, I appreciate Marcia and the job that you do. And as our audiences tell, you're not only knowledgeable about what you do, but are a person that does it with a lot of fun and gusto, and we're just delighted to have you a part of city staff. Glad that you didn't stay in food service, that you didn't stay with Coca-Cola. Glad we rescued you from Louisiana to come to Georgia.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, thank you for being with us, and join us the next time on The Agenda. The next time someone mentions to you the term community development, hopefully our two shows will have given you a better idea of what they're talking about, whether it's infrastructure, housing improvements, or other types of improvements in a community. Community development is something that benefits the community, and we're delighted to have an active program here in Douglasville. So this is Bill Osmond, City Manager, signing off for this edition of On the Agenda. Look forward to seeing you next time on City TV.